Back in Boston, back when I was bitten, I wasn't alone. My best friend was there, and she got bit too.
No way.
Ellie!
Oh, are you kidding me?
Come on. Riley!
8 months after The Last of Us launched to critical acclaim on 14th of June 2013, players got to experience more of Ellie and Joel's story with the Left Behind DLC. Originally released on Valentine's Day 2014, this video releases as the expansion turns 10 years old. But Left Behind arguably wouldn't exist in the form we know it without the comic American Dreams. Written by game creative director Neil Druckmann and cartoonist Faith Erin Hicks, the comic was published by Dark Horse in 4 installments between April and July 2013 to tie into the launch of the game. It's from this comic that we have the character of Riley, a look and personality designed by Hicks, and the lore both of the two girls' friendship and of how Ellie came to know Marlene, as well as learn more about her mother. Development on Left Behind began after the release of The Last of Us in June 2013, overlapping with the publication of the comic. The team working on Left Behind was half the size of that working on the main game, telling the story that followed on from American Dreams, as briefly described by Ellie in a conversation with Joel at the very end of the game. Though there is a gap between the two, with exactly what happened not explicitly stated, as Druckmann felt it better to allow players to draw their own conclusions, the development fed into fan interest in both Ellie's backstory with Riley and the gap between the end of fall and the beginning of winter in the main game, with the two sequences contrasted against one another through the use of flashbacks. When playing through these two periods, you're faced with two very different gameplay styles. The combat sections are definitely fewer than the interactive story sections, which will not be for everyone, but will be familiar as the blueprint for the birthday gift section of The Last of Us Part 2. You can, according to taste, or perhaps how many times you've played it, take your time and seek out every interactive prompt and every Easter egg and little detail of the story, or just blaze through to the next area. The fact that this is largely self-paced will save it for those less interested in this than the combat, which we'll come to, but at the same time this DLC is very openly an extremely story-dense one, and so at least on a first playthrough, most players are likely to be here for that. Beyond pressing triangle to interact with things, there are mini-games to engage with. These aren't particularly complex or challenging, but between throwing bricks at cars, fighting with water guns, and using button prompts to win a fighting game taking place largely in Ellie's imagination, there is fun to be had, and it all serves to build up the core relationship with this story, and gives an interactivity to those heartwarming sequences that, as good as the Left Behind episode of the TV show was, HBO couldn't quite emulate. On the other side of things, Ellie in the present will have to take on first infected, then humans, then a mix of the two, who, like in Part 2, can be set against one another. Though these encounters are few, they're as fun and at times intense as the winter section of the main game. They also culminate in perhaps the hardest combat encounter of the entire Last of Us series, especially when you ramp up the difficulty, making this one of the most fun aspects of all of Part 1 from a gameplay perspective. Like the main game, the presentation of all this is fantastic, with the PS3 era graphics still looking good in their own right, and of course the PS5 remake graphics being on another level. The music by Gustavo Santaolalla still manages to tug at the heartstrings or increase anxiety as needed, and the sound design feeds into both the story gameplay and especially the combat gameplay perfectly. The story here, as mentioned, serves to deepen Ellie's character by providing us with more context for her relationship with Riley, whilst framing that with the space between Joel's injury in fall and meeting David in winter. As with the main story, the performances are fantastic and built on a script which knows well how to deliver real emotion while relying on nuance and subtlety in place of exposition. focusing all of that storytelling skill into something much more focused and interpersonal than a journey across America while fighting through infected and bandits, arguably makes it more powerful. There's a gap between American Dreams and Left Behind where Riley and Ellie fall out, and we never learn the source of that. But the decision to leave this and other details to the player's imagination works far better than providing us with extra dialogue about details that, honestly, we don't need to know. There's enough in there to give you the essence of their characters, to show you what's bubbling under the surface, and at the same time provide additional world building that again serves specifically to develop their characters, that we don't need anymore. Nothing feels unnatural, rushed or forced, and the heartwarming and tragic moments alike hit their mark. Before we dive into the weeds of the narrative, this is your spoiler warning. We will be going over the entire plot of The Last of Us American Dreams comics and The Last of Us Left Behind. So if you've not experienced them for yourself, I highly recommend that you do that first. Told across 4 issues, American Dreams is a very short story that focuses on Ellie prior to the events of the game. The first issue starts with Ellie on a bus driving to a military building, the boarding school that will be her home until the flashback period in Left Behind. On the bus, Ellie witnesses in passing a person being scanned and found positive for cordyceps infection. Though she is horrified by it, the bus drives past before she can see the person being executed. Once she arrives at the school, a soldier speaks to her and warns her about pulling any of her old stunts in this place. We don't know even the man's name, but it's clear that there's a relationship here, albeit one that's coming to an end as he declares he cannot take care of Ellie anymore, having his own family to look after. Immediately, this speaks to a recurring theme in Ellie's life, one which she articulates in the ranch house scene of the main game.
Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me. Everyone fucking except for you. So don't tell me that I would be safer with someone else, because the truth is I would just be more scared.
Equally thematic of Ellie's character is the altercation that occurs immediately after. Confronted by a group of bullies, she refuses to back down despite clearly being in over her head. Even when Riley saves her, she insists that she had it covered and didn't need help. After being caught and punished by the principal, she finds herself washing Fedra vehicles. Riley's words to the bullies, "I should stomp your fucking balls," are in her head, and she repeats them over and over. This is something we will see from Ellie more than once in the course of her story, latching onto and emulating those who protect her. In part 2, we see her try to act as Joel would have multiple times, even while seemingly in denial of needing any help. But Riley is fascinated with Ellie too, it seems, as she has stolen her Walkman. This leads to a confrontation in the cafeteria, with Ellie getting the Walkman back. Though the altercation seems more playful from Riley's point of view, toying with Ellie and trying to get a measure of her. In the night, Ellie catches Riley sneaking out. Riley tries to talk Ellie out of following, but is soon convinced and reveals that she already knows Ellie, deeming her crazy enough to be interesting, and so they head out into the night. Once they come to a halt, Riley asks Ellie about her future. Here we see Ellie's worldview defined. She doesn't see the value of thinking too far ahead, seemingly too caught up in surviving in the moment and defying a world that's against her. But it's also a world she's woefully unprepared for, as we see both from the infected person at the very start and from her horror at finding a severed finger when washing cars. Her rebellious nature has no target and is scattergun, defined at once by her longing to escape, reiterated through her love of comics and science fiction, and the feeling that there is no escape. Riley, by contrast, feels the immediacy of the world they live in pressing on her. She is not far off being forced into the life of a soldier. Or, though she deflects the question of an alternative for now, there is an idealism there, striving for something better rather than resisting everything and nothing without direction, as Ellie does. Soon we see their first trip to the mall, which we will revisit in Left Behind. In the arcade, Riley shares her love of a fighting game called The Turning, and on the lower floor she introduces Ellie to Winston. In between, we see flashes of Ellie being a child, imitating mannequin poses, and also struggling to process the horrors of the world, imagining what the arcade was like before, followed by the bloody fate of the world. Riley convinces Winston to teach Ellie how to ride his horse, which he grudgingly accepts. He warns Ellie that Riley is trouble, and Ellie agrees, saying that she likes her. Meanwhile, living up to the warning, Riley uses the time they are away to steal something. When there is an explosion outside and Winston tells them to return to school, Ellie realises that it's a walkie-talkie and is angry at Riley for using her. However, their arguing is cut short by the radio revealing fireflies are nearby. And now we know what Riley's idealism leans towards: the rebel group as an escape from life with Fedra. Ellie calls her nuts, but when Riley runs off anyway, she doesn't take too long to decide to follow. Ellie is nervous and continues trying to talk Riley out of her idea, but Riley insists that on the rooftops they'll be out of harm's way. However, when they discover trapped fireflies, she reveals she also stole smoke bombs and wants to use them to help the fireflies escape. Despite her reluctance, Ellie goes along with the plan, which works, until Riley cheers from the rooftops and gets them shot at. Running away drives them towards a group of infected, who in turn chase them into a dead end. The fireflies save them by killing the infected. However, when Riley tries to talk to them, she is stunned unconscious. Ellie lashes out in retaliation, but is easily knocked down. At that point, the woman leading the group recognises Ellie and addresses her by name, before ordering the others to bag them and move them out. Ellie is blindfolded. She comes to in a smuggler's tunnel, where the fireflies are arguing about staying put as ordered or moving because they're too exposed. Ellie uses the distraction to slip her binds and reach for a shard of glass. But this is when the woman, Marlene, returns and voluntarily unties Ellie. At Ellie's insistence, she orders the others to also untie Riley. She then gives Ellie an envelope to open when she gets back to the school. Riley, seeing the chance of escape slipping by, argues to join them. Marlene refuses, but is interrupted by smugglers who try to extort the fireflies out of their guns for using the tunnel. As a firefight breaks out, despite her idealism and desire to join them, Riley is frozen in place and is only saved by Ellie knocking her to the ground. This snaps her out of her paralysis, and she goes for a gun. Ellie in turn hits the man who tries to stop her with a brick. Riley shoots the man, knocking him down, and Marlene finishes the job. Riley insists that this is the second time they had saved the fireflies, but Marlene only gets angry at her. She threatens to kill Riley, as this will be her fate as a firefly, prompting Ellie to bite the hand of the firefly holding her back and point his gun at Marlene. This leads Marlene to reveal that she knew Ellie's mother, Anna, and was protecting Ellie as she had promised to. Ellie is shaken by this, but as we've seen from her actions, has now developed a fierce attachment to Riley, the latest person she's put her faith in to be there for her, and only lowers the gun on her say-so. In return, Marlene gives Ellie her mother's knife, the knife she will rely on throughout both games. In the aftermath, Riley's idealism over escaping to the fireflies seems defeated, and Ellie's suggestion that they run away is met only with pessimism, and so the two part for the night. But whilst Riley has for the moment seemingly lost her cause, Ellie has found someone new to care for again, as well as a connection to the mother she never knew. Left Behind puts us in Ellie's shoes in the time between Joel's injury at the university in the fall and her meeting David in the winter. In an old mall, she desperately seeks out medical supplies in order to take care of Joel's wounds. And as she does so, once again facing the prospect of someone she cares so deeply for dying on her, her thoughts drift back to the last time that happened, in a different mall. In the time since American Dreams, Ellie and Riley had fallen out, and Riley had disappeared. She returns, surprising Ellie in the night, and reveals that she has become a firefly. Ellie is furious, having thought Riley was dead, but also relieved, even though she curses her own naivety as she agrees to follow Riley. They end up back in the mall, and the conversations they have give us hints of the relationship they had between the end of American Dreams and their falling out. Ellie talks about having her water guns confiscated by Corporal Dickhead. She asks if her surprise is a dinosaur, a question she'll ask Joel in the birthday gift chapter of part 2, demonstrating the connection between her caring for someone and being comfortable with sharing her special interests with them, and they reminisce about Winston. He apparently died of a heart attack, his horse being taken by Fedra. When they are diverted into a Halloween store, their childish side comes out as they wear masks and play. But there is an initial unwillingness by Ellie that speaks to the underlying tension between them and the fact that this is yet to be resolved. This comes back in the aftermath of the brick challenge, where whatever question Ellie asks isn't fully answered. Once they turn the mall's power back on, Ellie tells Riley that she knows what she's trying to do. She doesn't say that it's working, but she does concede that she's glad Riley isn't dead. Then, as they enter the mall, her eyes light up with happiness and wonder. In the equally bright but far greyer present, Ellie fights her way through infected to reach a medikit in a crashed military helicopter. Grasping it tightly, she whispers,
I'm not letting you go.
She is, of course, speaking not to the medikit but to Joel. After what happened to Riley, and the others who died in the interim, she is determined to save Joel.
Are you ready?
Totally. Are you kidding?
Told ya.
In the mall, the experience Ellie and Riley have is mostly defined as childish fun, of a kind that they can't really have in the post-cordyceps world, reclaiming an innocence they arguably never truly had and never will have again. But there is more to it than that, as we can see in the look Ellie gives Riley as they sit on the carousel, and the unspoken moment between them before they leave the photo booth. These two things, the fun of childhood and the romantic undercurrent, come together as Ellie imagines playing the turning. Her eyes closed, her experience narrated by Riley, the focus entirely on Ellie's face as lit by the glow of static. But the moment, the reclaimed childhood and friendship, the simmering of romance, the repair of their rift, is coldly snatched away by the revelation that Riley is leaving. The Fireflies are sending her out of Boston, and this is her last chance to see Ellie. She cannot quite bring herself to say that she wants Ellie to stop her from going, but she does ask Ellie what to do. However, Ellie, blinded by the thought of losing Riley, her anger at being abandoned to begin with resurfacing, tells her to go. Riley runs away from this, and Ellie pursues her. They reconcile with a water fight, and Ellie more calmly reiterates that Riley should leave because she is following her dream. Only once they're dancing does Ellie finally give Riley the answer that she wants, and insist that she stay, leading Riley to rip off her Firefly medallion. Ellie kisses her, and beams wildly when it's clear Riley reciprocates her feelings. This moment is cut short as the music in the store attracts the infected. Back in the present, Ellie pulls back from her memory with the urgency of the need to reach Joel. To get to him, she must fight her way through David's men and infected, in a series of increasingly tense battles, before finally being able to bring him the medikit.
That's it.
If anyone's alive, don't even think about surprising me! You line up like your friends, you hear me? Yeah? Yeah.
Ellie and Riley's chase by the infected ends with both alive but bit, and facing the prospect of becoming infected. Ellie rages and smashes up everything she can find, continuing to impotently defy the world even as her defiance still refuses to do any good. Riley's response is more muted, but having attached herself to Ellie as well, she also opts to stand in defiance, just in a different way.
The way I see it, we got two options. Option one, you take the easy way out. It's quick and painless. I'm not a fan of option one. Two, we fight.
Fight for what? We're gonna turn into one of those things.
There are a million ways we should have died before today. And a million ways we can die before tomorrow. But we fight for every second we get to spend with each other. Whether it's 2 minutes or 2 days, we don't give that up. I don't want to give that up. My vote? Let's just wait it out. You know, we can be all poetic and just lose our minds together.
That this scene of Ellie and Riley opting to turn together, fighting for every last moment, is intercut with Ellie sewing up Joel's wound and moving on with him strapped behind the horse, underlines Ellie's state of mind here. Her immunity robbed her of the chance to be with Riley to their last, and now she will not be put in that position again. She will cling fiercely to those she cares about, defy all odds, take on armies of bandits and infected, to not lose them. This reflects Ellie's mindset both at the end of The Last of Us Part 1 and in her final conversation with Joel in Part 2, that her life is defined by those she lost or wasn't able to save. She lives only for them, and if she cannot save them, then she can at least sacrifice herself for her life to mean something. This is both why she fought so hard in Left Behind to keep him alive, and why she resented him when finding out the truth of his actions, and, as she saw it, what he had robbed her of. As she told Sam, her greatest fear was being alone. From desperately begging the soldier at the start of American Dreams not to abandon her, and onward, that fear has defined her actions throughout the games. Once the focus of the main story shifts from Joel in Part 1 to her in Part 2, one question crucial to her character arc will be whether it should continue to do so, or she can escape the constraints of survivor's guilt. Far fewer people will have played Left Behind than The Last of Us, just because that's how DLCs work. When streaming it, I've definitely had a lot of people who've played the base game not recognise it. In the television adaptation at least, Ellie and Riley's story is interwoven into the main narrative, increasing awareness of it. Or if you're a Last of Us fan and somehow over the time the game has been out this DLC has passed you by, I would definitely recommend picking it up. If you enjoyed this video, then please give it a like and consider subscribing to keep up to date with all my content. Like the video that just popped up, which YouTube thinks you should watch next. This is a Patreon and member supported channel, so if you want to become a member and unlock custom badges and emojis, early access to my videos, and your name in the credits, then click the join button below. Thanks very much for watching, and see you next time.
What the fuck are you looking at?